Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury.
Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. How are you? I hope you're all doing very, very well. You know what you want to do? You want to rewatch that Old Trafford game, don't you? Well, you're in luck. You're in luck. George and I just rewatched the first half of the Old Trafford game. I'm joking, and this won't be for everyone, and that's absolutely fine. But if you do want to check out the rewatch, I think it's really interesting to go back and have a look at that, get a sense of what went wrong, what went right, why we performed like that, and sort of a sense of how we sort of make a path forward. It's too early for that, but get a sense of sort of where we go from here, and the mistakes that we made, and but also some of the positives as well, because there were some big positives. So if you want to go check that out, then please do. From the link in the description, you can check that out for free on Patreon, or you can sign up as a YouTube member and get loads of other content, scouted, etc. We'll be doing rewatches, of course, throughout the season, probably of mostly the sort of the big games, or the sort of the contentious games, or the games we're going to learn stuff from, which is ultimately this one. But I'm here with my boy George V, aka Danny Zuko. We've got three things we want to talk about. Why don't you start us off, George? Because I think one of the big things, and the thing we kept coming back to in the rewatch, was about the press. I think that was certainly something for a team who are so good in the press. It was a bit of an off day. I think there's a number of factors. Talk us through sort of your feelings and what we sort of learned during the rewatch.
Yeah, I'll leave the meat on the bone for you as far as the first trigger and some of the things that Michaela talked about. One of the big things that I've noticed within this rewatch is just how loose the team was in terms of our lines. And so you have a back line, just to review, you have a midfield line, and you have an attacking line. And when those get stretched, obviously the distances are too big to cover, and that becomes an issue on timing. And Declan Rice really struggled in this game to react to his pressing trigger. And so, yes, we had a little bit of a delay potentially up top, but the backing up of the press and the winning of our second balls really took a hit, because I think Saliba had a tough game in terms of his ability to control his area. And the team seemed quite, intent on doing a man-to-man kind of structure, which meant that those battles and those timing is really key, because if you lose the one man-to-man and they're off and they're behind you, you've eliminated kind of an entire line right in the press. And if those distances are big, you've given yourself a large amount of work to do, especially for United, who wanted to avoid the midfield. And there was just this insistence to hit Mbeumo long and early on the right and avoid any kind of midfield presence to pass through. But there were several times that Bayindir was able to find Bruno on the inside, because our press wasn't exactly compact. We weren't able to really hit our markers well. And so those second balls weren't effective, and winning those second balls weren't effective. Then what we did after that, in terms of once trying to regain and retain, the last part of the retain just didn't happen. And it became a volleyball match and a repeat of Maverick 3 in that one thing.
Yeah, volleyball, basketball, whatever, pick your analogy. I think Mikel mentioned it after the game. There was certainly on the regains, a bit of a too much intent to go forward at times. I think we could have done with just putting our foot on the ball at times. I think a couple of other aspects here. I think so many times we've spoken about, and I see a lot of sort of press analysis, and it's important to do it, but I see a lot of like, this is the way Arsenal pressed in the game. And I'm sort of like, well, they did in that sequence that you're talking about, but then we pulled Martinelli back, then they pulled their centre-backs wide, then they moved De Ligt into the pivot, then they did. It's constantly evolving. And I think the big thing for me is, generally, I think we covered them pretty well. If you sort of paused before most sort of sequences, or when Bayindir had his foot on the ball, we looked in pretty good positions. I think one of the big things was the lateness. That was kind of a massive aspect for us, and that's something Mikel spoke about specifically with Gyökeres, but actually I think it was everyone. Gyökeres, I think it has the most excuses because he's new, and obviously Havertz knows the triggers and stuff like that, but players like Declan Rice and Odegaard and Saka and stuff, I think were a little bit late in covering spaces, and it just gave them a little bit too much time to pick out passes. But also, how many times, and you sort of mentioned it there, how many times have we spoken about our team and said we've forced them long, we've won that second ball, we've got the regain, we've got it on the floor, and we played through them. That just didn't happen. It doesn't matter how you set up. If the ball goes over you, you don't win that second ball and they can play through you. You could commit your goalkeeper to press. It doesn't matter if you don't win the ball. So yeah, I think it was a kind of many-fathered problem, I think, in the press. One of probably the second thing really to talk about with this was really what we did with it on the floor. And we've spoken about the sort of the transitions and stuff on the main pod, which you can go check out from yesterday. It's really interesting because, again, I don't think it can be reduced to one thing. It's just the releases, or it's just the running lines, or it's just our intent, or it's just the chemistry. It's a load of things. But I think what we saw was a number of errors, I would say, in terms of specifically running lines. I would say, we saw a number of ones where players would be too narrow. I think Saka wants the ball to feet a little bit too much, maybe isn't willing to run in beyond at times. And, it's not every time you need to run in beyond, but there are times. I think Gyökeres physically adapting in terms of getting into the league and those repeat sprints and stuff. I think sometimes he can give us a bit more thrust, but also there's times when he's occupying centre-backs or he's occupying defenders and we're not using the spaces he's creating. We're just adjusting to playing in this slightly different way. But that said, and I mentioned this on the rewatch itself, we're actually last season, so from 2020, 2021, I always struggle saying that, up to now, 2024, 25, or last season, we've gone up every single season almost in terms of fast break shots, apart from a dip, actually, ironically, in 22, 23. Our fast break XG has increased, our fast break goals have increased. Generally, the team and the league is becoming more that way. So it's not a case that Arsenal just don't do this, Arsenal can't transition. But I think we all feel there's somewhere to go with this. What do you feel are the sort of the main issues?
A lot of it's decision making in transition for me, just in general, and it's a team issue. I think that a lot of people have used some of the transition clips to really isolate Martin Odegaard, but it's not just him. There was moments that we're looking at it, whether you wanted to highlight the Martinelli break, whether you want to highlight, there's a moment that, Gyökeres is going on the overlap. And at this time, it was Martin who had sent him a little bit wide in transition in the moment. The thing that I've seen is that people were a lot more narrow. And if anything, do you know what this screamed of? I'm giving you constructive criticism and you've overcorrected. So I would like us to be more vertical. All we did was be vertical.
Yeah.
I would like us to have our forwards operate a little bit more narrow, not be as touchline. The forwards were only narrow. There wasn't a lot of people working to hold width. And it really just screamed like that because there's a lot of things that I think that we as fans have asked for as tweaks, but they almost just did the tweaks and ignored everything before. And that seemed to be an overcorrection on some of those things. The one thing is that we do need to learn how to play with Gyökeres, and this needs to be something that we put a lot more emphasis on. So when we're playing the ball over the top in the press and immediately going long towards Gyökeres and you're asking him to win and become a reference, we need to play him into space. If we're going to constantly ask him to put the ball up and win headers like that, not only is it something that I know that we've critiqued on the channel before, but you're just not playing to his play style. And this is a person that wants to run in the Jamie Vardy aspect. You're not going to ask him to be Giroud. And we were asking him to, in a way, be Giroud, and, we were asking him to pivot. We were asking him to basically be the person that we play into, around, and then go into exploit space. But really his best moments are when he's peeling wide, when he's peeling into the channels, given time to run, isolate his fullback 1v1, or go into the box and be free to do those things. And we were playing him like we play with Havertz. And that's not correct. And that's not fair to him. And so we do need to learn how to play, which is something that I think, Mikel had made mention of again. This isn't something that is massive analysis, but at the same token, I think the players are learning. He's only been here about a week and a half, right? So, as far as being able to learn the type of striker and the passes that you like, that's going to take a little bit of time. But as a team, I think we need to be a little bit more cognizant of that, because we are with our fullbacks. Like, we make a conscious point, 20 minutes to go, get the lockdown fullbacks defenders on. Let's get away of our more adventurous ones. So we understand the difference in the profile as a team in other areas, but we need to do the same with our attackers. And lastly, I will say, we just need to do a little bit more tightening of the decoy runs, I would say, just in general. So when we do transition, there typically is a decoy, and then there's somebody that you're going to play in. And you have to make the decision about whether the decoy is getting it or not in the right moment. Both of those two things create a successful transition formula.
Yeah, I think specifically on playing with Gyökeres, we sort of mentioned this on the rewatch. Obviously, we've expressed our concerns about him. We're happy with the signing overall because of the price and because of what I think he can offer Arsenal. He can absolutely be part of a title winning team, but we have to play to his strengths. And yeah, I think the but at the minute, firstly, it is the first game, so if we're going to be saying that, it's important that we're saying it now and not in March or April, right? And so we've got to give the team time. And there were some signs. There was a couple of passes from Martin Odegaard. There was a few balls through. We were playing a bit more vertically, but it's just about learning to play with him. But that's going to require players like David Raya to be a bit braver sometimes and say, actually, I need to play short, because if there's next 2 or 3 passes are going to go forward, then that puts Gyökeres in a great situation. Going long to him doesn't work for him. Also, when he's occupying centre backs, and he really is. It's creating spaces for Odegaard and Saka, etc., and they have to use those spaces, not float balls into the box as they've done before. So everyone has to sort of play their part. There's a lot there, and it's all on the rewatch. So I think it's a really interesting one. If you're into your tactics, it's probably one for you. Wanted to come to, though, and we've sort of come to this on the main pod. We spoke about this on the instant reaction, but just every time speaking about this Old Trafford game before we sort of put it to bed, we won at Old Trafford for the 3rd time in 18 years. And I don't want any of the analysis of it and what Arsenal can do to take away from that. I saw something that popped up. I think it was 20th of December 2016. Someone put a graphic together. Arsenal away versus the current top 6. In the last 21 games, this was under Arsene Wenger and the yellow Puma kits, if you remember it. We'd won none, drawn 7, and lost 14. We got 7 points out of a possible 63. And something popped up on Sky yesterday. Results versus the Big 6 in the Premier League, but since May 2023 under Mikel. Games 22, wins 13, draws 9, defeats 0. Goals 44, goals conceded 20.
What was 0 again? Can you just say that in how many games? Because I don't think people hear that.
Yeah. Defeats 0. Games, and also, George, games 22, goals conceded 20. Less than a goal a game away against the Big 6. So we're in an unbelievable position, and I just don't want any of this to overshadow what we've done. And we've gone to Old Trafford and on a bad day and all the benefits. And it's weird to come away from a game where we are analysing the issues in our game model and the performances and adapting and all this sort of stuff, but also feeling really quite positive. It's a slightly weird thing, almost from a narrative sense. I'm really happy with what we've done.
I think that people can't have their cake and eat it too. You'd like Arsenal to be more vertical. They tried to be more vertical. They didn't get the balance completely correct.
You can't expect it to be perfect straight away. It's not gonna happen.
Want the attackers to be a bit more narrow because you felt that at times they were too touchline last season. Very fair. We've made the same critiques. It overcorrected, but you saw it. And lastly, you did critique the team for basically feeling like you had to be at perfect optimum levels to beat any team, and constantly look at a team that, yes, the field tilt champions here. We analyze performance and we constantly say on a performance level, we deserve more points than anybody for so consistently. However, when it doesn't go wrong and the team doesn't play well, are we able to turn around game states and win games that we shouldn't? We did. So there is equally where if this becomes a pattern of over 5 games in which a lot of these things are happening, then yes, we'll discuss it because something has gone wrong systemically at that point. But when you start to get a data point there, and I'm not willing to ignore the United, I'm not willing to ignore the hatred that I alone feel. I will speak from my own fan experience right now. United is the team I hate. I hate them most. And you know what? I'm sorry. I've seen us play the perfect game at Old Trafford and David De Gea basically do this weird shot-stopping performance that has come once in a lifetime. And, I've seen him basically seal points for them. And I sit there and I'm like scratching my head. What did we do wrong? What in the world did I do wrong to lose that game? I don't feel that way. And mate, like you read out that point away at the Big 6. Again, I don't think people are hearing it. That's 22 games, 0 losses. Like I go into Big 6 teams now saying, I'm not going to lose. And I don't think that people give it the credit that deserves. And, we've talked pretty much the majority of this video about how poor the performance is. Guys, sometimes you have an off day. You have a bad day and you just got to get through it. I know everybody can relate to that feeling. There's one time at work, you weren't at your optimum peak and you just wanted 5 o'clock to come. You keep looking at the clock. Is 5 o'clock coming? Is 5 o'clock coming? And, it just wasn't coming off for us. And that's okay, as long as we're not looking to make this a pattern and we're not looking to make it define us. And that's not something that I think the team has ever done. So I'm willing to put it away. And I'm just happy, by the way. I'm looking at it. We always highlight Saka, Rice, Saliba as the pillars, the non-negotiable starters of this team. All had horrid games. One of the worst games that I've seen for each of them, potentially, especially Declan and Saliba. I felt really, and Declan particularly, struggled quite a bit in this match. And so, at times you got to constructively criticize your darlings who you love. But at the same time, if your 3 best players are all having off days and the team in general is having an off day, you're just looking to be solid, come away with a clean sheet, get all 3 points, walk. That is how I take that when your collective team is so poor on the day.
We did. So yeah, you can go check out that rewatch if you like. It's an interesting one, and I think something that it's strange because all those things are true, but I'd still want to look at the performance aspects of things and say, we can improve on the transition, we can improve in the press. We're uncharacteristically bad. I'm interested against Mikel against 5 at the back and 3 at the back and how he adapts and evolves and stuff. And there's lots of stuff there that I think we'll be coming back to throughout the season. So yeah, fascinating as always to follow our beautiful club. Thank you all for being here. Make sure you check out the rewatch if you would so like. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
And thanks so much for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Ferocious.